I really want to emphasize that what you achieved there was taking 3 members of staff, 56,000 turnover in a year, to hundreds of staff with 150 million turnover.
So I learned the world of business and products like Pegasus and accounting, and that was my degree. My parents decided to remortgage the house to reinvest that back into the business to keep it going. It wasn't enough. The business collapsed, house was repossessed, we were homeless, and even now, I mean, Xero as a business is 15 years old and still growing at 30%, which is insane when you think about it. I mean, that, like, for a 15-year-old business that has grown exponentially over that time, to still be growing at the rate that it is a huge feat and achievement, which I'm sure the team are very proud of still. But it's pretty easy. It's like you've got to keep at least doubling.
Welcome to part 2 of my conversation with Gary Turner, the co-founder of Xero UK. In the first episode, we heard about Gary's journey from childhood, his parents' business, and his career through to the point where he received that message on LinkedIn, offering him the opportunity to grow Xero UK. Now let's find out how that journey went.
You're sort of going with your gut. You're doing that looking and sort of looking for that. So the Xero era is. I want to come down to some of the stories and do that, because some of the takeaways that would be great to talk through is sort of the thing that what the journey really is like growing a business like that. But I really want to emphasize that what you achieved there was taking 3 members of staff, 56,000 turnover in a year, to hundreds of staff with 150 million turnover, is the sort of thing that you'll have. You don't have to throw a stone very far to come across an aspiring, sort of dreaming on a wannabe entrepreneur saying, I want to build the next. That's what I want. That's what I want to achieve. You did it, and would really love to hear sort of various. First of all, some of the stories of sort of what happens during that journey, and how you did it.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. It was an amazing, 12 and a half, nearly 13-year period. And partly, I think, what was a huge help to me is this idea that I'd done the prep. You know what I mean? I'd read the Clue Train Manifesto. I'd understood what it meant to be authentic as a communicator and a leader. I had little reverence for the traditional world of business, definitely a disruptive mindset, love of technology, and one of the ways I might describe my skill set is like I'm a general manager with a capital G, capital M. I can shake a stick at pretty much anything, and therefore in the early 2 or 3 years as we're beginning to kind of get Xero up and running, and we had no marketing team in the UK. There was a couple of people in New Zealand who would maybe help us with a few bits and pieces overnight, but there was no marketing team in the UK. We had 2 salespeople, we had 1 customer service person, and 1 kind of technical consultant, and me. And
see, I've heard stories of literally you go to an exhibition with a couple of pop-up banners.
Yeah.
And people today will look at Xero as a multi-hundred million pound company, and you were the managing director of this huge organisation with hundreds of staff. But literally, it was you going to a business show with a couple of pop-up banners standing at the show, as we were just at the business show a couple of weeks ago, and you got people walking by and you say, "Have a look at this." You're doing that.
Been there, because we're 40, 50 people in New Zealand, 3 or 4 people in the UK, no brand, really any. I mean, we're probably spending $5,000 a month on marketing and kind of customer acquisition, so not a lot to play with either. And so it is proper bootstrap. If you need something done, you better as well just get on and get it done yourself. And so my kind of my ability to turn my hand to anything that needed to get done, I think, because I'd learned to do that, because I'm just like a hands-on operator. And so, for example, if we were just launching a new feature, or there was something that we thought was worthy of putting out a press release or something, I would just write the press release. I would write the blog post. If we needed to do a video case study interview with an accountant or an early customer to put it onto the website, I would take the video camera along and I would do the interview. I would then edit the video. I mean, literally, I mean, we have no office. We're all working from home. There's 5 or 6 of us, all working from home. We're using, it's funny now how the world has completely changed to this reality, but every Monday we would do like a Skype team call, and all the things that businesses have had to do in the last 2 years because of necessity, we were doing because that's just how we ran the business. Because we were just like really early and really small, but very digital. And so I was HR, I was IT, I was like, if we hired somebody new, I'd go into the Apple website and put my credit card in and buy them a laptop and get it delivered to. So for like IT fulfillment, logistics. I remember one really great story. We were doing a conference up in Birmingham at a big accountants conference, and Xero was there as an exhibitor. So we'd have like the pasting tables and the brochures and the putting your business card in the fishbowl and all that stuff you do. And because I'm running like everything, I'd forgotten to get the brochures couriered up to the venue. And I'm like, oh, I haven't done that. But because it was only like 40 minutes up the road, I thought, well, I'll just deliver them. And so I picked my daughter up from school and I'd loaded all of these boxes of brochures into the back of my car, drive up to the office of where this events company was based up near the NEC, fortunately, where the venue was. And they says, yeah, I'm here, I've got a delivery from Xero. It's a bunch of boxes and things like that. And so they take me in and carry them through, and then I leave. And then the following day, we're at the event. And then I had like a 10-minute speaking slot or something like that. And the person that was organizing the event then saw who she thought was the courier from the day before coming in to do a talk about the future of technology. And so that's a great example of like, if a job needs done, and if you're not very organized and you screwed up and you forgot to do it, you may as well fix it yourself. And so I think one of the things that really helped us in the first 2 or 3 years, loads of belief, having great products, but I mean, lots of things going for us, was my ability to get stuff done really quickly. So if we needed a press release done, or we need something creative or something built or something dealt with, I'd go, right, I'll do that. And then within 15 minutes it'd be done. And I think somebody without that capability or that skill set would go, right, I need to speak to my PR contractor who's on holiday for a couple of days, and then I'll tell them what I need. And then they'll write a draft, and then they'll send it to me by Monday, and I'll make a couple of changes, and then it'll be ready to go in about a week. And within 15 minutes of recognizing the need for the press release, I'd already written it, and it was out there.
See, that's what I love about small business.
Yeah.
I'm looking at the guys manning the cameras here. To Jeremiah, like just to my right here, it was me that drove down and picked up his new laptop from the store that he works from.
Yep.
And set it up. It's like that what small business does. Is you're in it, you're on it,
yeah.
And if something needs doing, it doesn't matter who it is. Where I don't have such a passion for big corporate businesses, because then it moves into, as you're alluding to there, the departments where it's, okay, that's not within my remit, I don't do that, or it's that agency that does that, so we won't touch on it, it'll have to wait. And it also gives, which I think plays really well to getting Xero, sort of, getting that leapfrog going, is you're agile, you can make those changes, you can spin on a sixpence, and you can react quickly.
Yeah, and I think huge enabler. And I think there's a great saying. Rod Drury used to say this a lot, although I don't think he originated it. Is it's not the big that eat the small; it's the fast that eat the slow. Yeah. And there's something about that that's so powerful. If you can get something done, you can resolve an issue, you can seize an opportunity quicker than your competitors can. then that's a massive advantage. That ability, Aaron Levy, who's the CEO of Box, the online storage and productivity platform, he put something on Twitter a couple of weeks ago, which I love. And it's like the clock speed of your organization. Remember, we used to buy processors and they'd be like 60 megahertz or 90 megahertz, the clock speed of the chip.
Yeah.
And
Have the little turbo button.
That's right, yeah. They actually didn't really do anything. I love this idea of clock speed, like the pace, the vibrancy, the hustle that you can imbue into a business and into its culture. And if you can capture that and just go for it and just get stuff done, massive enabler.
And with you having that, I would use the term can-do attitude, of literally I'm part of that team. I'm here working with you guys. How much of a difference do you feel that made to the team? I mean, I would argue throughout the whole duration, but at those days where you're building this project, you're building this enterprise.
Definitely, you've got to be able to bring people with you. One of the most important skills you need to develop, whether you're founding your own business or leading a business or a manager for the first time, it doesn't really matter, is that you've got to be able to identify great talent, like exceptional talent, and you've got to convince them to come and work with you, right? And so you have to have the ability to build empathy and trust with people really early on, recognize the potential in somebody, and then convince them to stop what they're doing for somebody else and come and join you. And I think there's something there about trust. And people want to work with people that they trust and that they can get behind and that can take them somewhere or they can learn something from. And I've always been, all the way through my career, I've always been very instinctively led. I'll just like follow my own nose and my own curiosity and be very genuine and authentic. And I think part of that is just coming from a classic kind of good working class values where you just don't mess people about, say it as it is, do what you said you're going to do, look after people, don't be an asshole, that kind of like good, straightforward working class background, but then marrying that with this idea of, well, people want to be treated like humans. People don't buy bullshit anymore. And that relates also to the people that you're bringing into the business. And so I was able to convince some amazing talent not only to join me on the journey, but then to kind of have them follow me and get all the way along. And I think there is something about authenticity in there and being prepared to get in and just, there's this sense of being vulnerable. A lot of people in leadership positions feel like they have to role play, that they have all the answers, that they're like the kind of smartest person in the room, and there's a bit of ego there, and that's all bullshit, actually. You need to know what your job is. Your job is to hire and bring great people in, enable them, drive them, inspire them, lead them, coach them, and help them, and then get out the way. Actually, I've learned that ability to just be who you are, and, well, I don't know how to do that, or I'm not very good at this, or actually I think you should do that because I've no idea what I'm doing. And so many leaders struggle with that, and it's been a huge enabler for me, and it builds trust in the people that you've got in your team.
I always use the analogy when I'm talking to my team or people coming in, is my job is just to make sure that everybody has the tools they need, the freedom to do, and the support they need, and exactly say, get out of the way and let them develop and sort of progress and do, and within their career as the best they can do. Otherwise, I'm just going to be getting in the way.
Yeah,
it's so true, and I love what you say just there about sort of being too proud, almost like expecting to know all the answers. As you were talking, we've recorded a bit for UK Business Forums very much on that subject, as a sort of business advice snippet. Anyway, is that I feel that if you are the business founder or the leader of the organisation and you're there saying, I know the answer to this, you know the answer to that, you're then stifling the people around you from feeling like they have the ability to voice their own thoughts of ideas, because all you're doing in effect is shouting over them. If you turn around and say, "This is what I think," but I'm not sure if that's the right way. What do you know? And just enabling people. So, but choose to or don't share your own ideas. Let them speak, but allowing everybody to say what they think, put their ideas in the pot. You get the best solutions. Everybody wants the same goal.
Yeah.
If you've got the right team around you, everybody wants the same goal. It doesn't matter what idea is gone with.
Yeah.
Just everybody put it in, and let's just see what, even if you want to A and B test it or something, it doesn't matter. Let's just see. I
think you're right, and I think I remember a conversation with Xero's CEO Steve Vamos. 2 or 3 years ago, we're doing like a 1-to-1 or something like that, and he says, "Well, what do I do? Like, boil it down to like, what is my job?" And by this time, I mean, Xero, when I finished up last year, is in the UK is like over 600, maybe 700 people, 150 million in revenue, much bigger business than it was, and I was still loving it and still involved in it, but obviously no longer couriering brochures to events. And the best metaphor for how my time at Xero, how it began and how it evolved, again, is like a very visual thing. Is that I remember saying to Steve, I think I'm a window dresser, right? And he's like, "Okay, please explain what you mean by that." And because what I have got the ability to do without getting in the way of people is to have a very clear visualization of what good looks like. And if you can imagine my weird metaphor here, you're standing out on the pavement of your shop front, which is your window to the world, right? I mean, literally, that's how you get people into your shop. And if you really think about it, you want that to be as attractive and as appealing and as enticing and whatever other values you want to convey as possible. And so I love this idea of when you're running a business or building a business or whatever, is to take that step back and go, well, how does this look, not to me or to my team, how does this look to a potential customer? How does this look to a passerby? Does this convey the right kind of qualities, or does it grab their attention in a way that's compelling? And I think what I love doing, and I think I was good at, one of the few things I was good at was like having a very clear picture in my mind of what the shop window for Xero should be, and guiding people to that without doing it for them. But then also knowing where we're going off track here. Actually, that side of the window is a bit imbalanced, and there's a couple of dead wasps down in the right-hand side, so we need to get that cleared up. You know what I mean? This idea of curating or visualizing or compiling this future state, this end state for what is the optimal way we can present this product or this argument or this discussion, sharing that vision with people and letting them get on and do it, but then being there to jump in if it goes off track. And I loved that. I loved helping smart people build that shop front and then execute it.
So that's how you described your role towards the end. Was that your role? Did you have that clear vision and picture at the very beginning as well?
Yeah, I did. And I think, just saying it there, I think it's all connected to the way my brain works about this visualization thing. I'm a very visual thinker. And I've also kind of done some thoughts. There's a killer way of communicating. This makes me sound very erudite. I've done some thoughts, and I've done some thinking about how I write. And if you actually look at when I write, I use language like "this feels right." This doesn't feel right. I use the word feel. So I'm a very kind of instinctively led thinker, and I visualize a lot.
I can feel eyes looking at me and stuff, because literally any of my team who get like when they communicate with me, whether it's verbally written, I use that same feel. When we're sort of talking about direction strategy for UKBF, where we're heading, our plans for next year, things like that. I talk about how I want the member of the community to feel.
Yeah.
I talk about how I want people to feel when they see the brand.
Yeah.
And I get I feel like that's not quite what we're doing. There's something inside that just trying to manifest, but
yeah. I used like if this feels like the right thing to do, or this doesn't feel right, or this seems wrong, or this seems right. There's a very emotional, kind of instinctive way of engaging and communicating and seeing the world. And I think everybody's wired up differently, and maybe you and I are similar in that respect. But the good news is, if that happens to be the way that I operate and engage and communicate, then people buy emotions, people relate to emotions. We're all humans, you know what I mean? So that's the reality of people want to feel good. Yeah. You know, if you go to out for a nice meal, it's not like you're consuming some calories that are presented to you in a pretty way. You feel great, you know, because you're in a nice environment. Absolutely. Yeah. And what's one of the big shifts of the last 20 years has been this idea of customer experience. Yeah. It's no longer just about having a great product, partly because there's nowhere to hide if you've got a bad product. The internet will smoke you out pretty quickly. So everybody has to have a great product. And so therefore, that's just tickets to the game now. What you've got to do is every single touch point that somebody has with your company or your brand or your product or your service has to be joined up, has to be congruent and consistent, and has to be amazing. And those are feelings, those are experiences that people buy on now. And so fortunately for me, I've always related to that way of thinking and working and communicating, and that helped me in the earlier part of my career. But even when, like in the first couple of months of Xero in the UK, I had a very clear picture in my mind of what the potential could be. My frustration was not everybody else had that yet. And they go, oh, you're just like another one of those like cloud accounting products. Like, no, we're not actually. We've got a much bigger vision here, but that will expose itself in due course. And so I think I had it from the very beginning, and that helped me curate and build that shop window in the first year, and then every year subsequent to that.
What was so during those early years, what was the first milestone that really impacted you in that journey? Because a business with that much growth, without a doubt, would have had quite a number of milestones. So you're at the point where there's less than a handful of you were working from home remotely, doing Skype calls on a Monday to catch up. What was the next milestone that Xero hit, where you sat there and thought, sort of took a step back and was like, we've hit it. We hit this point now. This is good.
Yeah, that's a great question, because I think there's this kind of romanticized idea that people have, and you look at the story of Facebook, and like 1 minute nowhere, and then the next minute boom, and everybody's driving Ferraris, and it's all like one day it just goes off like a rocket. And the reality is it doesn't work like that. But I do believe there are lots of little micro milestones and inflection points along the way, and there's an aggregate of all of those tiny steps build up to one progressive big step over time. And so I remember probably it would be 2011, and so I'd been going a couple of years, and like Xero in those days, 2010, 2011, we might be doing, I don't know, 10 new customers a day. 15 new customers a day would be the kind of run rate we would get in terms of sign-ups to the product, which when you consider there's like 3.5 million businesses globally using Xero, and at some point in the next year like 1 million in the UK, when you're adding 10 a day, that's a pretty slow curve. But even just noticing when 10 a day became 15 a day, and then 15 a day became 25 a day, and you go, do you know what, this is doubling. You know what I mean? So the numbers are still really small, and there's no Ferraris in the driveway or in the car park yet, but there's a real sense that there's a continuity here to the growth that we're seeing. That's good. So at least it's still growing and growing in a predictable way. And then by about 2011, going into 2012, we're maybe doing, I don't know, 30 customers a day. And we're beginning to sign up more and more accountants to the platform and to the program. And there was a real sense that this was the next big shift that was happening. And people were beginning to go, what's this cloud thing all about? And that was a big milestone, because I thought, okay, we're going to have to get an office now. We're going to have to hire some more people. We've proven the model. We've proven we can get some runs on the board, but we can no longer run the whole business from home with like 5 people. We need to go and hire more salespeople. We need to go and hire a marketing person. We need to go and like build out the next layer or the next version of the operating model. And we're going to have to put them in a room together. And so we got a serviced office in Milton Keynes, just down the road, early 2012, and I think it had like 10 desks in it, and it felt, oh my God, like we've gone legit now. We've actually got an office, and we actually then started hiring more people, and then within like 3 months, we'd knocked the wall down and taken on another office, and then another 3 months, and so we were the best customers ever to this services office company, because
I've been to that office, I remember.
Yeah, and we were like knocking walls down all the time, to the point where we had like about 5 or 6 different compartments all over this building, and probably about 40 staff. And we thought, we now need to actually have our own place. And then the next milestone after that was 2014, when we got our own office. And we had maybe about 50, 60 people by that point.
Do you know what I've just realised whilst you're talking there? About you talking about your office. I'm literally, people listening to this won't see me do this, but I'm literally looking at Jacob here on the camera, because John Thorpe, previous guest, ACS, they kitted out Xero's office.
Oh, wow.
They literally, I just love how some of our, like, the guests are sort of like paths of cross. I'm getting like a fuzzy feeling, just the thought of that, but like how connected all the sort of things are. But back on track with the office.
Yep.
I've been to that office, and I remember sort of visiting as a partner, and in another business that I had at the time, and it was a cool office. It was like really sort of setting a trend as well, and sort of looked as at what you would expect today a technology business to look like, but it looked like it back then.
Yeah, and again, I think this connects back to 2 things. One is this whole idea of an experience. You know, imagine if you're using Xero's tagline then was beautiful accounting software, because it was, and that was an oxymoron, because not only was Xero aesthetically easy to use and pleasant to use, people would never associate the word beautiful with accounting software. It was like you'd associate root canal treatment with using accounting software. And so that was a great, like, provocative tagline for us. And so imagine you're using this beautiful accounting software, and then you came to our offices and they were really shitty. They were like, well, that's not what I expected. I would have thought everything was amazing. And not just when customers would visit, we'd want to create an environment that was in alignment with our brand and our culture and our values. Equally, we wanted to attract great talent who wanted to work in an environment like that, where they had, I mean, there's a great little kind of like sub-story here. I mean, we've all been in businesses. There's either a big drum of Nescafe instant coffee powder in the kitchen that's got a little bit dry around the edges, and you've got to hack some coffee granules off, or you've got a really lousy vending machine. And I remember at Pegasus had a vending machine, and you had to pay for this like coffee flavored water, right? But because that was the only option you had, you kind of like the Stockholm syndrome of it comes in. You go, it's not that bad actually. It's pretty. It's kind of like coffee.
It has the caffeine in it.
And then if you're really, really daring, you'd go for the vegetable soup, which was just like another gloop substance altogether. And like workplace environments and experiences have changed a lot since those days, where you had to pay for this really crappy coffee. And we got like a full like coffee shop barista machine in, like a proper big one that you can make proper coffee with. And we got freshly ground coffee delivered every week. And because Xero had so many customers that supplied coffee, we would buy from our customers. We'd try and buy as many things from our customers, actually. And we'd get our customers to send their baristas into the office to train our people how to make great coffee. And to some minds and observers, that might sound like a bit exuberant. That might sound like, you did that? You spent like $5,000 on a coffee machine. You spent a couple £100 a week on freshly ground roasted coffee. You got training done. We had fresh bread deliveries every day. We had like fresh fruit deliveries every day. We had all these little kind of things that I imagine some kind of finance directors were going, really? How much is that costing you?
You was giving back to your customers.
Well, there's when you think about let's say it costs you $5,000 a year to have great coffee in an office environment. Frame it differently. If you could go to a business owner and say, if you pay me $5,000, I will make your entire team 5%, 10% happier at work, more productive. They'll get more work done. They'll love coming to the office. And all you have to do is cut a check for $5,000 and I'll make that happen. Anybody would bite your arm off for that, right? If you can make my people happier for $5,000, well, that's all it costs to get great coffee in an office. But so many businesses approach up, oh, we're not going to do that. We'll just go to we'll get like a big tin of Nescafe in. And Nespresso is a great intermediate, by the way. Not everybody can justify a big industrial one, but if you've got a large team, you can. And so many business owners get that the wrong way around. They go, no, I'm not going to spend $5,000 on coffee. That's ridiculous. No, actually, you're not spending $5,000 on coffee. You're spending $5,000 on creating an amazing environment for your people who will be more productive and happier and will love coming to work. And your people massively impact how happy your customers are. Your customers can't be happier than your own people are. So it pays to invest in a great workplace, a great environment, because it's not just good for your team, it's good for business as well. But so many businesses get that the wrong way around.
Yeah, no, it's if you're managing your team by your account spreadsheet, you're not managing them correctly.
No.
Very quickly picking up on that we both clearly sort of run by emotion. You strike me as somebody that on that milestone, when you moved into that office, you got there, you probably took a moment or two just to look at it.
Half a second.
Yeah.
I have an aversion. I wouldn't quite so far as call it a fear or a phobia, but I have a kind of superstitious aversion to pride. And I think it stems from possibly the experience growing up, seeing what happens when a business fails, right? And so you don't want to kind of go through that again. But I remember getting my arse kicked by my sales director in my early 20s, and I was working for this IT services business in Glasgow, and I was 21, and because I just got on and did it and was able to have discussions with business owners and founders and CEOs and entrepreneurs around the Glasgow area about technology in a way that they trusted me, and they went, oh yeah, I'll buy that. I was selling like really big IT projects, like hundreds of thousands of pounds worth of IT projects every other kind of month at the age of 20, 21. I wouldn't buy the proverbial coffee machine from a 21-year-old today, but somehow I was able to convince these grown-ups to invest their entire IT strategy and future of their business as it related to IT into this kind of like scruffy 21, 22-year-old tech guy. And I did really well. This is about 1989, 1990. I'd only been doing it for about a year, and I just like lucked in and just was successful. And then one of the things that happens early on in your career, if you experience that kind of success, you think, well, it's just, I must be really good at this. I'm a natural, right? And what it was actually quite a lot of luck. And unless you continually invest in building your sales pipeline, it was in those days, then you might be salesman of the month or salesperson of the quarter, But unless you've put the groundwork in to keep your pipeline going and to keep all of your other projects going, then you'll be at the bottom of the table the following month. And I remember getting a bit of a chat from my sales director, and I'm like, I'm a top sales guy. I mean, like, you can't. I'll just do what I want. I just like show up and business walks in the door. And I had like a quiet month. And he gave me it was a really great wake-up call, actually, about, no, that's not how it works, son. You've got to really put the effort in all the time, sustained, consistent effort day after day after day. And if you do that and you're also lucky, then you'll do all right. And so that has stuck with me. And I therefore have always had a sense of resisting the desire to feel too proud of my achievements and our achievements as a business. I remember, like, famously in Xero, anytime we finished the financial year, or because of course Xero is like a public company in Australia and was in New Zealand in those days, and so we were having to like publish our results every 6 months. And it's like handing in your homework in public. Here's how the business is growing, and I remember, like, one of my kind of catchphrases that sign off my emails whenever we'd achieved some new milestone or some new achievement. It was like, fantastic work, team, light a cigar, put your feet up for 15 minutes and get right back to it, right? Because we don't have time to celebrate. We don't have time to run around high-fiving and body slamming about how amazing a job we've done. And I think that's partly because I had this fear that if we did that, we'd kind of lose the hustle, we'd lose the momentum. And so I think I'm very grateful for the time that I had at Xero. I feel a sense of achievement, taking a business from the size it was to now, I mean, you see adverts for accounting software on TV now. I mean, accounting software has been domesticated in that, which is ridiculous. And if we've played a part in that, it's great. But the reason I got into this wasn't to sit back one day and feel proud of my achievements. The reason I got into it was driven by my purpose and my passion and my love for technology and love for supporting small businesses. That's what I feel feels like more of an achievement for me, helping other business owners and their families have a good lifestyle and achieve success. And if my involvement in getting Xero going here has in any way contributed to that, I feel more satisfaction about that than how amazing the office is and all the awards and all the glitz and the glamour. That's great, but that wasn't why I did it.
I find that interesting because I don't disagree with anything you've said, but I also feel it's important to recognise your achievements along the way. To know you're on the path of where your vision is going. I equally, when as an organisation we have achievements as a company, it's we, and I would be the first to recognise a member of the team and literally say, did a good job there. That's fantastic, or you've achieved well there. But in the same vein, like using your expression there for half a second, I would argue that you're the window dress, you have the vision, you're going there, and it is a team effort, because without the team, as business founders or owners, we're not who we are. We need the team behind us. It's not a one-man show, so to speak. So it is a team effort, but we're being pedantic of terminology here. I take that full on, but it's not half a second. I would argue that it's important for everybody to have a bit more, to literally turn around and just have that pat on the back for a moment, and recognise those achievements, and recognise them to take a point to take a breath and just say, we're on the right track, guys. Literally, we've done good here. We've done well. Let's have a drink, whatever it might be. But to actually make that concerted effort to recognise it and then get on. But then just for you personally, I follow up sort of like question I was going to ask you, because I've never experienced this, and I can only just imagine how I would feel when you have an event like Zerocoin. So here you've got a business that, again, going back to that, is like literally a micro business. A handful of people working from home, less, 50 odd K turnover, and then you're at an exhibition centre with the team, stage out there, the walking out on that stage and looking out into effectively the darkness of hundreds of faces, of a team that you lead, just how, so many questions, but literally, how does that feel?
It feels, so the last Zerocoin that I did was 2019, which before the pandemic. And that's the one that Brad Burton spoke at, actually. Yeah. He did a great job there. And so that's at the Excel Docklands Centre in their big shed. And what I love about that is it's like 3,500 people in the darkness, and you're talking about VAT returns and tax software, and like there's something like it's like a rock concert setting, but talking about the most boring subject ever. I love the incongruity of that. Do you know what I think? If I stopped and thought about what I was doing, I probably have had a nervous breakdown. You know what I mean? I think there's this idea of like, whatever you do, don't look down. Just keep climbing. Because if you look down, you're going to completely like freak yourself out about how high you've climbed. So just keep going that way. And so whether it was like going on stage at Zerocoin to 3,000 people, or any of the other kind of big moments, they just felt like I was just doing my job. You know what I mean? I was grateful for it. It was great to be part of that community. But again, I would place myself in that context as doing what we set out to do like 10, 12 years previously. And that sounds like, I know why you're asking, because it sounds like I'm almost like I'm ignorant of how ridiculous that context is, of moving out from a tiny software company to 600-700 staff and all the success that Xero's had, and for it to be going, it was pretty cool, actually, it was all right. But I was pretty much, this is great, and it's like where we expected it to be, and just don't screw it up, and keep going and keep going and keep pushing and keep learning and resisting complacency. And so it was amazing. But it was my job, and I just got out there and did the best job that I could do, whether it was at Zerocoin or whether that was in the office or wherever the context was. I don't know. I know what you're asking. I'm maybe not explaining my thinking well.
Because where you say, I wouldn't use the term sort of ignorant to it in sort of the literal sense, because I feel I'd agree with you. I can, I said, only imagine, but if I was in that situation and if I stopped on that stage and just let that sink in, I'd probably shit myself, or like literally like, and then at that moment, instantly massive imposter syndrome,
yep.
And all those things to kick in. So I agree why, but I'm imagining this scenario that either, which is what's behind the question, either you're being the person you need to do what you need to do to just keep going, or you're at that point now where business is growing so rapidly that it's becoming a hamster wheel kind of situation where you are you're on a treadmill of rapid growth, now growing and running a huge organisation, where you're not the guy delivering the flyers now, literally, and the train's running and you're on that train, that like no, the tracks aren't moving. You're on that journey, and the journey's taking you, and that's the kind of picture I'm almost picturing up in my head.
Yeah,
Which is where I'm coming from with the question.
I don't think I definitely wasn't a passenger on the train. I mean, so that Zerocoin 2019, me and a couple of other people spent about 4 hours building the agenda for that. And so I was still right in the, like, this is the shape, that I was designing the shop front for Zerocoin, right? I was designing the shop window for what we wanted it to be. And so I was still felt a huge personal responsibility and accountability for the business and the events and the projects and the initiatives. And I'm still the designer, if you like, nudging people in the right direction or saying, no, don't do that, do it this way, and then getting out the way. And so I think it's therefore because I just saw it as I was just the same sense of belief, conviction, motivation, passion, just at a bigger scale. You know what I mean? And it got to 3,000, but it wasn't 3,000 on day one. It was like 10, and then it was 50, and so you build up to that. It's not like one day you're nowhere, and the next minute you're talking to 3,000 people.
So the next one's it's just a little bit more than it was before.
Yeah, literally, it's just it's like last year's, but a bit bigger. Okay. And again, back to this sense of belief, success visualization. I would have run through in my mind. I mean, I'm fundamentally an introvert. I'm quite happy being in my own company, and not taking the limelight. But as the managing director, I had to get up on stage and talk about where we're going and what the vision was, and I thought I would better do that then. But I don't. It was just my job. I loved it. It was great fun, and I really enjoyed doing it. But I think, as I said earlier, you just don't look down. Like, just keep climbing up the ladder and don't look down, and you're all right. Just look at where you are right now in relation to the growth. And yeah, because if you actually hit the pause button and stopped and took a step back and looked at it, you would freak out.
Did you have whether it was like a formal part of the business plan or whether it was just your own, a particular milestone or two within the business that you was like, that's what we're going for, whatever shape that is, that was sort of driving you?
Yeah, I think a couple. I think, again, driven by the belief and conviction that the world of software was completely going to transition to cloud, which then meant that actually more people would end up using it because old software was difficult, expensive, clunky, complicated, and that's why lots of business owners still use spreadsheets. And so therefore the potential market for a product like Xero was in the millions, not just like a couple of 100,000, because why wouldn't everybody use this in business? Therefore that's the opportunity. And I remember early on being interviewed by a journalist or an analyst, and they were saying, well, how big do you think this could be? And I go, Xero could get to 1 million customers easily in the UK. I mean, it might take a while, but there's no reason why we can't get to 1 million. And Xero's not quite there yet, but I'm sure in the next year or so it will pass by 1 million. And so there was that part of it, that kind of vision for what this could be. And in terms of our growth, because we were a like fast growth SaaS company, and Xero, we had raised lots and lots of money from venture capital firms, some of the largest venture capital firms in the world and over the course of like 5 or 6 years, we probably raised like $500 million of investment to really build a huge. I mean, building a global business is not cheap to do that and to hire the people. And therefore that basically set the expectation that we needed to be, certainly in the early years, we need to be at least doubling every year in size. And so that was a pretty focusing kind of metric to shoot for. It's like, how much did we sell last year? Okay, we have to do at least double that next year. And then we have to do double that the year after that. So you have this idea of like compounding growth over time. And even now, I mean, Xero as a business is 15 years old and still growing at 30%, which is insane when you think about it. I mean, like for a 15-year-old business that has grown exponentially over that time to still be growing at the rate that it is a huge feat, an achievement which I'm sure the team are very proud of still. But it's pretty easy. It's like you've got to keep at least doubling. And then once you get to the point...
Sounds easy when you say it quick.
Well, that's kind of your start. If your starting point is you have to double, that's the answer. Now go and work out how you're going to get there.
Three things. Three's always a nice and easy magic number to say. So if somebody has and it's usually technology, but I say it could be applied to any business really, a unicorn style business that people aspire to have, and they have these ambitions of the kind of growth that you took Xero through, and I'm still going to give you, I know it's a team, but I'm going to credit you.
Thank you.
That you took Xero through. What sort of advice would you give them that would put them in good stead?
Have this conversation a lot now, because one of the things I enjoy doing is I'm like coaching and kind of chatting with all our founders and CEOs and trying to share some of my experience. I think a few things. One is you're probably not thinking big enough. It's really easy to almost unwittingly be conservative about what the potential opportunity is for your business. I mean, clearly you have to have some sense of there's a market for this, and it's however size that might be. But I think there's an inherent conservatism that is prevalent. Maybe it's a British thing, I don't know, where nobody wants to stretch themselves too far in case it doesn't work out, in case you fail. And there's this kind of fear of failure, and there's a kind of negative stigma attached with failing and with failing businesses. And so people don't necessarily want to put their neck on the line. But if you had a product or a service and the potential market for that was huge, and you had faith in your product or your service and your own team and your ability, then why would you restrict your ambition? You mean, well, how big could this be? And think about it from a top-down assumption basis, not an incremental ground up. And there's so many businesses go, well, what did we sell last year? Well, we sold $1.5 million. And so what do you think we should sell next year? And you say, well, I don't know, 10% more sound good? Maybe 20? I mean, what that sounds like, why don't we go for 20? We'll shoot for 20% growth, because that's kind of respectable. And it won't require too much effort, and we won't have to go and hire that many more people. So we'll just play it safe, and we'll grow by 20%, which is fine, right? And actually, for some businesses, maybe 20% is the right number. But what you don't do is you don't actually even ask the question, could it be 40? Could it be 80? Could it be 100% growth? And if the answer to that question is, it absolutely could be 100% growth, then you're being delinquent as a founder by not investing to capture that. You know what I mean? But there's this sense of undershooting or undercooking it or being too conservative that I think most people could do with getting rid of, and just thinking, well, how big could this be? And like, if the opportunity was that big, then why wouldn't we find the talent and the capital to invest to build it? The other thing is that it's probably going to take longer than you realize as well. And so people think, well, I'm going to come up with like a 1 year or 2 year or 3 year plan, and then by year 3 it will be flying. And it's like and usually all the growth is back-ended to a 3 year plan, because it's, again, people want to be conservative and sensible. And after 2 years of being conservative and sensible, and all of a sudden it's just going to explode, it doesn't actually happen like that. So don't back-end your growth. But be prepared for it to take longer than you think as well. And your 3 year expectations might take 5 years, or they might take 6 years, or they might go in a different direction. And again, we maybe have the habit of oversimplifying. Well, we'll just hire some people and we'll do a bit of this and a bit of that, and then some magical marketing dust sprinkled on what we're doing, and then in a year we'll be at 5 million. And it probably won't work out like that either. And that maybe sounds a bit contradictory, because on one hand I'm saying you're not thinking big enough, but then I'm saying it'll probably take longer, and I think they're both accurate. I think that's my experience. It's going to take you longer, it's going to be harder, there's going to be many more mistakes and failures along the way, but you're probably also not thinking big enough. And then the final thing is people. And it's probably the most important part of that, is that you can't get there on your own. You need to have a good sense of your own capability and whatever your kind of strong sweet spot is in terms of your where you're coming from. But it's all about people. It's all about people. You've got to get people that want to sign up to the journey, that understand this concept of people don't buy products and services anymore, they buy experiences. And every touch point has to be consistent and amazing. And people that see that no matter where they are in the business, it's their responsibility to represent the whole business and to work hard and to push themselves. And I think if you can find great people, lead them and trust them to get on with it, then that's what will carry the business. And you might not be able to attract the right experience at the very beginning, because people with lots and lots of experience tend not to like to go and have to roll up their sleeves in a startup. But at certain points, as you grow, you must always be looking, how do we supercharge the team? How do we get the next layer of capability into the business to prepare it for the next phase of growth? And so constantly changing and building and bolstering your people, and finding great people and hanging on to them for all you can.
Absolutely. The people aspect is something which if I was to pick out those three, would be like the most important in a sense, because like we were talking about earlier, you can be the greatest founder in the world, but if you haven't got the team with you, then you don't have anything really. No. You've come out to Xero now, and you're looking for your next adventure, or what does the future have for Gary?
I think I'm now living my next adventure. It may be a bit more sedate than the kind of frenetic life I had at Xero. But I'm still, I guess instead of doing one big thing now, I'm doing like 20 smaller things, which is still making me quite busy, weirdly. So that wasn't part of the plan. I'm on a couple of boards. I'm still have like one pinky toe in the Xero tent. I'm on non-executive director and a subsidiary inside of the Xero group, which is great fun because I get to kind of hang out with my old Xero colleagues every couple of months at board meetings there. I'm on another board of a startup which has got great potential. The product's not even built yet. It's never mind pre-revenue, it's pre-product, but that will change soon. So that's, again, like thinking about how can I help, not being operationally involved, but how can I guide and support another founder in that startup journey. And I was saying to my wife the other week that I've somehow in the year since I stepped away from Xero, I've managed to. I'm working less intensively than I was because it was an incredibly intensive job. A lot of international travel prior to the pandemic, and obviously managing the size of the business now was quite demanding on time. So I'm not working as hard, but I'm still, all the stuff I love doing and all the stuff I loved about my role at Xero, I've recreated some of that. And so having great conversations. I love solving problems. I remember when I finished a year ago, and I literally unplugged from everything in January and February this year. And because we're still in the kind of second phase of the pandemic, you couldn't really go anywhere anyway. And then once the kind of world began to open up, I thought, right, we're going to have a holiday. So me and my wife and my daughter, we disappeared for a couple of weeks off the beach at the end of March. And it was great. It was great food and great sun. It was great being out in the country. And I'm sitting on the sun lounger every day, reading my Kindle and kind of learning about what's coming next. And I had this mild panic attack. I thought, when was the last time I had a business issue in my head or a problem to solve? And because I'd stepped away from all of that, my world was full of everything but that. And I recognized that although I'm an introvert and I'm very comfortable just plodding along on my own, I learned by walking away that I still need other people. I need, like, I had a conveyor belt of problems coming at me all day long in my career. And in January this year, that conveyor belt switched off. And it took me a couple of months to notice that. And so what I've been doing since kind of like April, May, is just like trying to help other people solve problems. Often, I don't mean like on a paid consulting basis, I'm literally just hanging out with other business owners and founders and trying to help them in some way, whether that's like a half-hour Zoom call or kind of meeting up with them, because I love the discussion, I love the problem-solving part of it. And I could do it all day long. That's what I love doing. And so I've probably coached and mentored and had conversations with maybe 40, 50 CEOs and founders over the last 12 months. I'm doing a bit of investing in some of them, some of the tiny bit of angel investing. I started a newsletter a couple of months ago.
Subscribe to it.
Thank you very much. Partly because I'm fundamentally lazy. And I was doing all these calls with other CEOs and founders, and they were all asking me the same questions. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm getting bored, like saying the same stuff. And I'm, do you know what? I'm just going to write it all down now. And just like go and read the newsletter about how to set up your business for growth. And so the closest thing I now have to like a day job is my Monday newsletter, which I haven't written. This Monday is coming, so I'm going to have to get my skates on because it's Friday.
Yeah.
And yeah, I'm having fun doing lots of small things, but I'm still fundamentally driven the same way that I was when I began my career. I still love technology. I think I'm beginning to have a picture form in my mind about what the next 10 years of tech is. I'm not going to share it with you now because I need to think about it a bit more.
Well,
I might write about it.
Next question then.
Well, you'll have to read the newsletter, but I think my kind of spidey sense is kind of helping me. It's kind of coalescing around a couple of areas where I think this new world of cloud apps that we're now all in, where does that go? And I'm quite excited about that. It's great. I'm having fun, and I literally had to travel 2 miles to be here today because I literally live in the next village from where we're sitting.
I was shocked to find that out.
Yeah.
So obviously I can't ask you my next question of where do you see the evolution, disruption of business going then, because you've just said won't say that. But so skipping to the next one, where if you was to give no, we're not talking like the high growth, so slight, you might have the same advice, but you've got a young person sat in front of you who's dreaming about starting their own business. They haven't even started yet. They just think, I want to do this. What would be the 3 nuggets of advice you'd give that young person?
Go on and do it, because it's through doing something that you learn, and you'll get instant feedback, and you'll discover gaps in your own knowledge and your own capability. So don't procrastinate. It's actually incredibly easy now to start a business today. When you consider when we both began in our careers, you'd need to write up a business plan. You need to go to your bank manager.
Just to get the bank account.
Literally, yeah. Please, can we have a bank account and maybe a line of credit and maybe a loan to go and have an office and a receptionist and a telephone system and fax machines and company cars and all that stuff. Now, you can have an idea to set up a business and it could be running like an hour later.
Do you think that's sidetracking if we go any further? Do you think that's all positive?
Do you know what I think?
How easy it is for anybody to just create a company, in minutes, online.
I think, do you know what? I think I have to take the long view there and say I think it is positive. Will it be positive in every situation? No, but that's like business. Not every business succeeds. I think the fundamentals of working life have changed in the last 40 years, where we've gone through the last gasp of what was the Industrial Revolution, and we all like commute to offices in the morning, or we work in factories and we put in a shift and then we come home and we get paid. And running a business was the preserve of the elite, or the few risk takers, the entrepreneurs, the true kind of like early, the 50s and the 60s and the 70s entrepreneurial spirit. And now I think doing your own thing has been massively democratized, that anybody can now do that, like, because you don't have to have an office, you don't have to have the physical manifestation of a business to get one up and running, you don't have to have a great bank manager. You can just have a few £100 in your bank account, register a website, depending on what you're doing.
Earlier,
yeah,
like, you know, you pretty much everybody knows somebody who's running
absolutely
a side hustle, a small business.
And so I think that what's amazing about this world that we're now in is that I met so many, like meeting so many customers that were using Xero and hearing their stories about how they got going. And there's a great business, like online craft beer delivery service.
Yeah.
And it was a bunch of 20-somethings that set it up. And they all had like proper day jobs. And they were working in banking or financial services or some kind of corporate job. And then in the evenings, they were working on their side hustle. And at the weekends, they were working on their side hustle. And then eventually the side hustle kind of got to the point where they could jump off the salary lily pad onto the side hustle was big enough to actually pay the rent and put food on the table. And it took them 2 years to do that transition. And so they wouldn't have been able to do that before the age of you couldn't have had 2 jobs before the age of the internet. And so I think that therefore means that doing your own, like you go to school, you go to college, you go to uni, you get a massive amount of student debt. You then try and get a job to pay all that off over the next 10 or 15 years. Or you go, do you know what? I'm not going to get a student loan. I'm not going to go to college or uni. I'm going to invest my time and effort and money in building a business. And I think being an entrepreneur is such a kind of like difficult framing because it means different things to different people. But whatever, running your own business now is a viable career pathway for many more people than it ever was. And so I think that's good. Yeah. Will they all succeed? No, but that's never been the case in anything. You might fail in a kind of corporate career. But the fact that you now can do your own thing without having to get permission from somebody, I think is a fundamentally good thing. And therefore, I think that the landscape of the kind of working population over the course of the next 20 or 30 years will change dramatically into more people doing their own, calling it a side hustle. It will be the main hustle they're doing. And they'll completely bypass getting a job and working their way up the corporate ladder. And so, yeah, I think in the round, it is a good thing.
Okay. So I interrupt you at that point just to ask that question. So what the last part you'd give to a young person?
Back yourself. Yeah. And this idea of imposter syndrome or needing permission from somebody else to do something or to kind of back yourself is, I know, something that I struggled with earlier in my career, and like everybody does. Like the reality is most people have imposter syndrome because it's actually a really healthy grounding safety valve that stops you from doing really wacky and stupid things. But I think people can get too caught up in that, well, I'm not ready yet, or I don't have the confidence yet. Trust your judgment, trust your instincts. Find a great mentor or a couple of people that you can go to for advice. There's lots of like grey-haired and grey-bearded people like you and me kicking about who are happy to help. So find somebody that will kind of keep you on track and check in with them once a month. But back yourself. And the chances are, if you have a sense of belief that you can make something work, that you can do something, you can achieve something, you'll probably do it better than everybody else because you'll do it the way that you want to do it and you'll do it in the way that you want to do it. And so I think it would be back yourself. And I wish I had maybe the opportunity to kind of back myself earlier than I did, and I finally realised that actually, no, it's okay having self-doubt and lacking confidence, but don't overdo it. And connect yourself to a purpose, connect yourself to something that you feel convicted about, and that will pull you to it. And for me, that was like solving problems for small businesses. So find your thing and back yourself.
Throughout your whole career, whether it's like before Xero and sort of that drove you to push yourself out through Pegasus, keeps you like both now and back then looking what's coming, and kept you going through that rapid growth in Xero. What is in here that keeps driving you?
I don't know, Richard. That's a good question. I think I love hanging out with really good people that I enjoy being around and working with and building things together. We're all inherently social animals at the end of the day, and I think there's a real sense there. There's something about technology for me, particularly that really early on in my life. I mean, as a teenager, I was like working with the BBC computers and the Commodore 64s, and there's something magical about software and like creating something and firing something up on a screen for the first time, and the potential that has to take a situation, whether that's a business or a person or an individual or whatever, and making their lives easier or transforming them or giving them more opportunity. There's the disruptive dimension there, that I love that. I'm always led to, and we touched on this earlier, is that I kind of have a respect for, but not too sentimental, a respect for what I've achieved at Xero, because I'm always much more interested in what's coming next. You know what I mean? I have, like, I'd happily blow up what we're doing today if it meant that we could have something nicer tomorrow. And so I love that sense of disruption and creative destruction, and I think that drives me. I think this is great, but where could we take it? That question I constantly ask myself, and I think that's a big part of my drive.
I'm actually more intrigued to ask you this question than I've ever been asked anybody else, because of how, as you just said, respectful of what you achieve, but the pride is. How would you like to be remembered?
Oh my goodness, I'm resisting the temptation to fall into David Brent territory here. It's like a chilled out entertainer first and great boss second. I think, how would I like to be remembered? I think I'd like to be remembered. I haven't asked myself that question. It's a tough one. I think I'm a good guy to kind of like be around and work with, like not an arsehole. There's too many people like that around, and you don't want to be adding to that pool. Do the best you can do, and therefore I think hardworking. I'm known for an amazing sense of humour. I say that ironically, obviously. This is one of the great things about being the boss, is that everyone laughs at your jokes, right?
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? And you walk around and think, do you know what? I actually am bloody funny, because every time I tell a joke, or every time I sit down with the team and I talk about what my weekend was like, everybody's really interested. So I must be really interesting and funny.
You go home and then your kids look at you like, shut up, Dad.
Yeah. And
Keep
actually,
it real.
they've been professionally interested in you and professionally laughing at your jokes. Anyway, I actually do think I have a great sense of humour, and so I think If I think I'm homing on it now, I think it's like fun, like achieving something meaningful, and it helped lots of businesses, but doing it in a way that people had fun doing it. People enjoyed it. They had a laugh. It was a bunch of great, fun, happy memories. Because why be miserable otherwise? You know what I mean? And so I think, basically, chilled out entertainer.
Yeah, no. Go with that. It's been even from the research for sitting and having this chat was fascinating, and just having the conversation didn't disappoint. It's been really great chatting with you, Gary. Thank you for coming in.
Thank you, Richard. It's been great. I've enjoyed it.
I hope you enjoyed watching this interview. Please remember to hit subscribe and like. It really helps us with the algorithms for YouTube, and I'll look forward to bringing you more interviews in the next episode of Drive, the small business podcast from UKBF.